Hello, everyone, and welcome to this last plenary of this year's 2025 Gastein Forum. My name is Aniek de Ruiter, and I'm a professor of health law and policy at the University of Amsterdam, and I'm also a happy board member of the Gastein Forum. Today, this last plenary is about solidarity in a digitalized world. And we're going to go with you through this plenary by first presenting you with a column, and then we have a panel discussion, and of course you as the audience, most important audience, can enter into the discussion through Slido, and we will show you later on the way to enter your questions into Slido. So the objective of Gastein this year is about healing the fractured social contract. And of course, digitalisation is only one of the major challenges that affects our social contract right now, and especially also health within that and our healthcare systems. We have diminishing tax incomes from defense spending, aging, and now we also have this digital revolution that could cause job displacement and could lower our tax income that we need to keep our health workforce working and our health systems innovative and working. So I was thinking, what actually is a social contract? It's kind of like the glue, the social glue that keeps our society together. But for me as a lawyer, it's also the rights and obligations that derive from that social glue that we come up with as a social construct as well. And when I think about fractures, I think about wabi-sabi art, you know, this Japanese art of putting together vases and making them actually more beautiful and strong than what they were before. And this is about accepting transience and imperfection as well. And so this is how I would like to introduce the plenary for today. And let's put together some of that glue in this last plenary of Gastein, that we can all bring that forward into our work in the field of health. And for that, I would like to introduce to you Virginia Maheu, a neurotechnology director of the Center for Future Generations, and she's going to give us some scenarios into the future.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. It's really a great pleasure to be here. So before I get started, just a quick note on the Center for Future Generations, where I work. We are a Brussels-based independent think tank dedicated to helping policymakers anticipate and govern emerging technologies, including advanced AI, biotech, neurotechnology, my program, and climate interventions. And also, just a quick disclaimer that my intervention, I'm talking about work that was authored by my colleagues at CFG in our advanced AI team. So it's very close to what I do, but please don't ask me any difficult questions. Thank you. So one of the most debated questions today is undoubtedly how and when artificial intelligence will transform our world, and rightly so. Health and welfare are front and center of that debate, as we've already heard several times throughout this conference. AI is already changing how clinicians diagnose patients, how people seek medical advice, and how the science of medicine itself is evolving. AI is a fast-advancing, general-purpose technology with far-reaching consequences, and it is now firmly on political agendas worldwide, including here in Europe. But if AI reshapes what we mean by work and contribution to society, then we face profound questions about solidarity, welfare, and the very structure of our social contract. The key uncertainty is how big and how fast its impact will be. Is what we're hearing mostly hype, or is there real evidence of disruption on the horizon? And visions of this future diverge. On the one hand, companies like Meta, OpenAI, and DeepMind are pouring hundreds of millions into AI research, promising breakthroughs that will transform our lives. Their intent is clear, and so is the scale of their investment. And indeed, scaling has so far delivered steady capability gains. Governments are also taking notice, launching major initiatives like the $500 billion Stargate initiative in the United States, or the €200 billion Invest AI plan in the European Union. On the other hand, For most businesses, the early return on investment from integrating AI into their services has been a bit mixed, and some warn that we may see diminishing returns on further AI scaling. But this may simply reflect the usual growing pains of adopting a disruptive technology. Beyond that, concerns are mounting about the potential scale of job displacement AI could bring, and is already starting to. And there are also deeper questions about the cognitive effects of outsourcing critical thinking to machines. If we delegate too much of our mental labor, do we risk losing the very capacity to think deeply ourselves? Such a shift could undermine the human brain capital that powers our economies, and it could fundamentally disrupt the social contract that underpins our societies. So, tech skepticism is healthy, and yet, dismissing AI ambitions outright would definitely be a mistake, because AI undoubtedly does have potential for improving health and well-being, and I'd argue especially when paired with wearable biometric devices such as neurotechnologies, my own specialty. And this combination could unlock advances in the prevention of disease, in early intervention and personalized healthcare. And of course, both industry and governments are betting big on this progress continuing. But it would be deeply irresponsible to assume that this future will simply unfold in our favor without drawbacks. For instance, OpenAI highlighted in its recent GPT-5 launch how a cancer patient sought help from ChatGPT to understand their diagnosis. This example shows both the potential for AI to support patient care, empowering them in their medical journey, and maybe even freeing time up for their clinician, but also the risks of blurring the line between a commercial chatbot and a medical professional. So who is liable if the AI makes a mistake that leads to patient suffering? How can states and companies integrate such systems responsibly into public health care, for instance, leveraging the European Health Data Space, like we discussed this morning? So, this brings me to our work at the Center for Future Generations. My colleagues in the AAI team developed several carefully researched scenarios for how AI could play out in the coming years. They're designed to help policymakers and other stakeholders anticipate and prepare for the profound changes this technology could bring. And I want to highlight just 3 that feel especially relevant to our discussion. So just to be clear, these scenarios are purely hypothetical. They're unlikely to come about exactly as described, because the world is always more nuanced and complex. But still, we're hoping that they might just prompt your imagination a little. So there you can see the full 5 scenarios, and please go check them out in our publication. But I'm going to start with this first scenario, Plateau. In Plateau, we see the most gradual AI capability development. Simply put, new AI systems do not bring about promise in proportion to current investments. Progress slows down, hitting a data wall, and does not generalize across different fields as is expected. Bigger models do not necessarily get better. And yet, Europe does seize the opportunity here. It leads a shift towards smaller AI models adapted for specific use cases. For instance, helping patients interpret medical documentation, maybe in their native language. Despite the slowdown, we still expect AI to change the way we work and live. For instance, already today, junior software engineering roles are already disappearing at a rapid pace, and we expect that to continue. Yet the broader productivity gains promised by AI are slow to materialize, and this lag creates space for societies to adjust their social contracts. But, of course, it also dampens the realization of AI's full potential. So the scenario begs some questions. Could decentralized, community-driven, local AI systems in healthcare actually perform better and boost trust? Or vice versa, will they be less reliable and risk fragmentation and inequalities? If AI does not deliver on its promises, then how do we deal with our shrinking workforce, our aging population, and our rising burden of chronic disease? The second scenario I want to sketch is called Big AI. Here, what's different is in just a few years, we have more capable AI systems, and especially prevalent are AI agents. These agents are autonomous programs designed to perform tasks and make decisions independently, for instance, making purchases or booking appointments. They're not quite superhuman, they can still be a bit error-prone, but nonetheless, their commercial use takes off. And very soon, AI has become the primary interface for almost everything we do. This leads to big waves of unemployment, especially in white-collar, cognitive jobs, and most acutely in junior positions. We also see AI development being concentrated in a handful of companies, mostly in the US, and public and government influence on big AI weakens significantly. This scenario perhaps throws the questions on the social contract into sharp relief. If employment-based welfare models erode under mass automation, what alternative forms of social protection become necessary? How can we make sure that these are ready in time? Specifically for AI agents in healthcare, what happens to solidarity if critical infrastructure and services depend on commercial systems that we do not control? Could these commercial AI gatekeepers end up creating new health inequalities? The third scenario is arms race. Brace yourselves. Let's imagine that in the next 2 to 3 years, AI is not only driving automation, but becoming a flashpoint in global competition. Export controls, chip shortages, and new tech standards spark tensions in global healthcare supply chains get caught in the crossfire. Even localized AI models are highly dependent on semiconductor and energy supply chains, which are notoriously sensitive to geopolitical conflicts. Europe's health systems find themselves squeezed. Everything from medical devices to digital infrastructure and even pharmaceuticals become harder to source. Soon, health services across Europe are forced into crisis planning. Embargoes and cyber incidents delay medical shipments, digital services go offline, and procurement costs spike. So the questions here might be, how do we maintain medical supply chains during tech-driven embargoes? How could Europe buffer its healthcare systems against systemic digital shocks? These 3 scenarios are just a glimpse of what the future might hold, and you can explore them and a few more in our publication, Advanced AI Possible Futures, on cfg.eu. I encourage you to do so. In reality, it's unlikely that one single path will dominate. Instead, we may experience a complex mix of these trajectories unfolding at the same time, creating both challenges and opportunities that we need to navigate carefully. Whichever path AI takes, one thing is clear: change is coming. You may already carry an implicit picture of the future in your mind, perhaps more akin to gradual progress, or perhaps you think it will be rapid disruption. But the truth is, we simply do not know. And that uncertainty is exactly why we need to think outside the box, to stress test our health systems, our welfare state, and our social contract against very different possible futures. If we want our societies to remain resilient, sustainable, and fair, we cannot afford to wait for one vision of the future to prove itself right. We need to prepare for all of them. So the challenge is this: how do we build health and welfare systems resilient enough to withstand very different possible futures, not just the one we expect? Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Virginia. And I would like to invite you on the stage, and also I would like you to introduce our speakers and also invite our speakers to the stage. We have Lasse Leitonen of Finland's Social Insurance Institution, Nell Thornton, Improvement Fellow of the Health Foundation. Eric Sutherland will be online, a senior health economist from the OECD. I was going to put all the numbers to all the ideas that we have today. And Vlad Voiculescu, a member of the European Parliament. Give them an applause. Thank you. It's okay. So, maybe starting with you. You heard some scenarios. What are your plans from the European Parliament, and also maybe in light of the role of the European Parliament in all of these AI developments in Europe?
Yes, hi. Happy to be here in Gastein always. You were talking about the social contract and rights and obligations. They start from, they derive from some basic assumptions that humans govern humans, that there is accountability, that there is no power concentration. I think there are, each of these factors, each of these assumptions are being challenged. We see a potential concentration of data, our data. We see a potential concentration of power. We see more and more the fragility of truth. And that, of course, leads us to a very relevant discussion about democracy and our ability to keep it here in Europe. I don't know if you use AI every day or every hour, but you can obviously debate with AI. You can ask for arguments, and it delivers really good arguments. So just imagine if somebody would ask 1,000 people to debate you. All of a sudden, it just takes some computing power. It's available for those who can afford it, and it can be multiplied with no limits.
But you are a lawmaker. So we just heard a number of future scenarios, and as a lawmaker, you're usually behind on some of the developments. It seems like this is the kind of challenge where you need to look into the future, as is something that the European Union has tried to do with coming out with a whole bunch of legislation. What is the scenario that you're thinking about as a regulator or as a legislator?
So first, we need to acknowledge we're lagging behind. Every legislator in the world is lagging behind. Then we need to look at Europe. Europe is a peace project, and it's my personal impression is that it's designed to thrive in peace times. Are we agile enough? Can we still afford fragmentation? Can we still afford to look at all these whole problems, these big problems on a country by country basis? I don't think so. I think we need to be way more agile. We have some instruments, like the Digital Services Act, and we have some ideas of in which direction things are going. But this is obviously not enough. And generally, we need to look at new tools that are relevant for our businesses here in Europe, so that they can thrive and that they can keep us competitive. And we also needed our taxation system. Things have been mentioned. So AI is definitely cutting off lots of jobs. And one of the promises in the social contract is that you work, you contribute mainly with your work, and then you get something out of the system. You get healthcare, you get pension, and so on. Is it still going to work if many of the jobs that have been mentioned are going to be erased? Not necessarily. So we have to think forward. So we have lots of relevant discussions, but we are outpaced. Yes. To be very frank. Yes. And the fact that I've just learned recently about the concentration of data, and that the risks that this is posing. And one example is NHS Palantir. This is a pretty famous example that is might or might not be problematic. We can talk about one company or the other, but the debate around it, and I cannot avoid discussing the impact of it on democracy, yeah, and on the level of trust that our system is based upon. So our social contract is based upon rights and obligations, but also, very important, upon trust. So we need transparency, and we need instruments that can hold AI accountable.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Lehtonen, you're the Director General of Kela, Finland's social insurance institution. We just heard some scenarios. How are you preparing for what's coming? And I mean, what are your ideas about some of the worries that we just heard from our MEP?
Well, I think it's very useful to have these type of scenarios because that helps us to prepare for the potential risks that we have.
Can you keep the microphone closer? Yeah.
Okay, and I think the important issue is really how this affects the workforce and salaries and taxation and trust of the people. We cannot stop the technological developments, and we had this type of processes in the past. Sometimes they have been quite turbulent, but if we know the potential risks, then we can prepare them and try to diminish the negative consequences that these changes will have. I believe that when artificial intelligence is used appropriately, we can improve our standard of living and get some more time for social interactions and that type of good things.
So you're not worried about tax income? You're not worried about, oh, we have increased investing in the defense, we have an aging population, and also we have now job displacement. You're not at all worried?
Of course, I'm worried, but as I said, we have to look the risks and then try to find ways how to minimize the potential risks and then try to maximize the benefits, of course. Technologies will develop, and in general, I think it's a good thing. But of course, every technology can also be misused, as we have seen in the history, and probably we are going to see some cases of misuse as well. And of course, it's problematic when the power is concentrated and the data is power, of course. So that's the reality.
And I know you're a lawyer as well. When you're looking at the European Commission, you're looking at the European Parliament, what would help you as a national director of a social security institution? What do you expect from Europe?
Well, I think there should be a faster action when some negative consequences come. We of course, we like to speculate, and sometimes we are preparing also for risks that are really rather abstract and unrealistic. And that's, I think, one of the problems of the European legislation, that we have abstract norms, but then when you have actual problems, you are very slow to react. So somehow the implementation should be faster, and maybe the number of regulations a little bit less.
Yes. So thank you very much. We have Nell Thornton. You're an Improvement Fellow at the Health Foundation. You've heard a lot of the challenges at this point. What is your vision about everything you've heard so far?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks so much for the invitation today. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all. I suppose what I'd like to add into the conversation is a sense of perhaps hope or empowerment. I think what's really clear from the work that Virginia presented is that, the one thing we know is that we can't predict the future. So how do we make policy when the world is in such flux? And so I often come back to a quote from computer scientist Alan Kay, who said, "The best way to predict the future is to invent it." So often, at the moment with technology, we're starting on the back foot, and we keep asking ourselves how the objects that we are being presented with might change how we work, or how we interact, or indeed even who we are. But those questions often rob us of our own agency. Instead, we need to be asking the question as a society, who do we want to be? What do we want the future of healthcare to look like? Because despite the narratives that we read, AI is not actually self-aware or self-perpetuating. And so to paraphrase academic Virginia Dignam, AI is in fact very human. After all, it's made by humans on data about humans, and it's humans who decide where and when to use it. And so the issue we have is not necessarily that we're kind of losing control of these technologies, but perhaps that the control and the power is sitting in the wrong place. The decisions on when we're using it are actually at the moment sitting with the innovator. Innovators who are usually commercial and usually, but not always, profit-driven. And our policy narratives are reinforcing this relationship between them. You kind of look at many of the policies written around technology and health, and they follow the same formula. They say that the healthcare is struggling, it's weak, it needs help, it's broken, it's got a number of these problems. And technology is posed as the hero in the situation, the thing that can come in and solve everything. And it robs us actually of our own power as a healthcare system and as policy makers. And what that does is, at least in the UK at least, AI in healthcare is not being driven by need. And so we need to stop asking ourselves the question, what can I buy right now? And instead start asking ourselves the question, what needs to change? And what AI systems might I use and where might they add the most value? Because as policymakers, we're often underestimating the influence we can have on AI markets. Our purchasing power is really significant, and we can use it to leverage the development of AI systems into our areas of greatest need, not just those where there is currently the greatest technological availability. But a large part of those considerations, and I think something we're perhaps not talking about enough, is what do the public and staff themselves think about the way that AI is being used as part of healthcare. Public support for innovation can make it or break it, and we've seen examples in the UK where when public trust is lost, innovation is significantly constrained. So what are we doing to hear the voices of people and take them into account? What do our patients want? What is going to help our staff the most? Because we can choose the technologies. We have more control than we think we do over their consequences. And Sam Altman might believe that AI is going to force social transformation, but to think so undermines our own ability to choose, to control, and to care. Our own research at the Health Foundation has shown that public and staff support the use of AI in their care, and it's right that we're looking at how it can address some of these problems, because they can be transformative, but let's stop being passive recipients of the technology that's out there, and let's start having a say in what's available to us.
It's almost like democracy, like we all have a voice, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So we've heard a number of really great ideas and also thinking about the future. Shall we put some numbers to all of these ideas? And I would like to very much invite online Eric Sutherland, a senior health economics from the OECD. You've been working on innovative thinking around our tax systems and some of the problems that we've heard today. Could you enlighten us?
I will certainly do my best to enlighten you. The challenge that we have is that from an economics perspective, understanding what the economic potential of AI, specifically in the realm of health, is very hard to estimate. There are estimates that it should be able to contribute upwards of 1% to 2% of GDP, and we've done work in that space. But the broader problems in health, which I think reflect on some of the scenarios that Virginia was talking about earlier on, is that there are fundamental policy barriers to actually achieving the outcome we want. And until we overcome those policy barriers, whatever numbers we generate in terms of the economic potential are meaningless, because those barriers are pervasive and in the way of making meaningful change. From a practical perspective, and I'll actually talk through each of the three scenarios Virginia was talking about, in terms of the plateau, much of the problem that we have in hitting that data wall is that, and this builds off of what Nell was just talking about, fundamentally the social contract may have changed. Well, not may have changed, has changed in the last 10 years, certainly around the digitalization of health. The requirements that we had when we first digitalized our health systems 10, 15 years ago was, we will remove paper from our systems because we'll digitalize. Great, and we'll define that as success, which then created a whole bunch of fragmented digital tools and technologies that couldn't integrate together. Now we recognize that the value of digitalization of health is not about the technology, it is about integrated, person-centered data. So frankly, we would not have implemented the systems 10 years ago in the way that we did had we had the requirements of today. And that's reflective of what the social contract is, what the expectations of the public are. The public expects that data are used. In fact, the public loses trust in the health system and in health providers when digitalized data is not used in their care. Our earlier Paris report showed that 31% of people will reduce their trust in that space. So if we want to be fostering that social contract which is grounded in trust, we need to be using the digital tools and technologies. We just need to be using them responsibly and effectively, assuring the protections are in place. But the outcome is use, because use is the thing that adds value. Yep. So that's point one. In terms of the big AI scenario, this is really about workforce transition. And I think the point that Virginia, you brought up about the potential loss of a lot of the entry-level positions is very concerning. We've been looking at the workforce transitions to a post-AI world. And in that, we reflect that there is significant transition that's happening, not just in the change of jobs, but also the creation of new jobs that didn't exist before. Things like AI safety officers or digital nursing navigators. Like, these are new functions that didn't need to exist 10, 15 years ago. These are new functions that are possible because we have digitalized our systems. And so I think it's really about how do we plan, if I can put it this way, for the medium and long term from our workforce needs. It is far too easy for us to be cutting low-level jobs because I need to pay attention to the bottom line. But that will destroy the economic potential of businesses in the medium term, simply because they do not have the workforce to fill those medium-level jobs, medium lifespan jobs, when those people then retire. So we need to have a way of designing our workforces, designing what the new jobs are that enable people to come in, acquire the jobs, the knowledge they need in order to perform the functions, in order to make the relative advancements. So that's in the big AI. Now, when we talk about the arms race, this is, I think, probably one of the major areas where AI is specifically challenged within health. Health has historically been really bad at its productivity gains, especially in the last 10 years. Other industries have digitalized and used technologies and had exponential growth, whereas health has been relentlessly linear in terms of the type of possibilities it has. Now, health is not good at scaling. They are not good at incorporating new innovations and making the types of transitions. And I think AI represents a very big paradigm shift. We produced a paper earlier this year that talked about AI as a general purpose technology, like electricity, like the internet, like railroads. And I actually, as I listen to what we're thinking about here, as I think to myself, if we had had this conference 110 years ago, 140 years ago, when electricity was first coming to pass, what type of reaction would it have had? What would people have been saying? When people were talking about industrializing various factories, what type of reactions would people have had? How can we channel that type of innovation and the energy that people had to transition the workforces, transition our capabilities to make use of these general purpose technologies on a go-forward basis? But this requires cooperation. A significant amount of cooperation, and this is when I hear what Vlad was talking about, it requires us to be able to work together better than we have been. There is a need for individual countries to maintain and retain their autonomy. Totally respect that, obviously. But there is a need within that to define how can we be compatible with each other. Doesn't mean that we need to harmonize how we do things. Everybody wants to be autonomous, that's fine. But there is a need to design for compatibility. And simply, I think of the electricity plugs that undoubtedly people are using, because you're in Austria, that allow you to transition your local power outlets to whatever local electricity devices to make use of the electricity in the way that is delivered in Austria itself. How can we actually do that? And how can the interactions between all the different types of electricity happen? Right. This year, with the same plug, I've been in Brazil, New Zealand, Thailand, as well as Switzerland, and obviously here in France. And the same power plug operated in all those places. Why? Because things were designed to be compatible with each other, even though the physical electrical outlets are different. So I think that there is a great opportunity for us to embrace that there is a common foundation on which we must all build in order to realize the potential of general purpose technologies, and design and agree about how to actually do that compatibly while enabling ourselves to be able to compete in the areas where it makes sense to compete.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. And I would just like to ask you, in the beginning, you said the major hurdles that you see is a policy challenge. And from what I'm hearing, the biggest policy challenge is something to do with cross-border harmonization of policies. And the OECD has been working on this also in relation to taxes. Can you maybe say something about this very shortly? Because this is something that very much prompted the discussion today as well, is that we're worried about tax income for our healthcare system.
Sadly, I will admit to the fact that I am not an expert in taxes, so it's very difficult for me to talk about that.
Neither am I, to be honest.
But I don't think anybody is, except for 3 people that are sitting somewhere in Geneva or down the hall. But practically speaking, I'm just being a bit of a stickler to adjust our language a little bit. It's not about harmonization, it is about compatibility. It's about respecting individual autonomy while doing what is best within your own local context. To have a fully harmonized tax scheme is going to be incredibly difficult because people will realize there is economic advantage. Frankly, there's also different tax needs in different countries because they have different social structures that they have in terms of what their tax base actually funds in and of itself. So we do need to work out what is a compatible approach to taxation that enables us to get the value out of our systems while actually providing the services that the public demands on a go-forward basis. Within that, I'll just leave it there for now.
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting. And Virginia, I would like you to maybe, after we have a bigger discussion also with the audience, to also reflect a little bit back to us about what you've heard so far about the scenarios that you presented to us. So for now, I know that you as an audience have been putting in questions into the Slido, but first I would maybe like to give a very short moment, the microphone also to Gottschalk, who's in the audience, who is the head of health of YouTube, Google Germany. What have you heard that affects sort of your thinking about the work that you do within Google?
So from what I've heard, the hybrid participant, we spoke about hybrid today, I resonate very well with what he said. I think, in Gastein we always have a focus on regulation and trying to kind of figure it out. And I think we spoke about it in another session that AI is I think when we look at it from the medical part of it, and first of all as what the promise of the technology aside from concerns, I think it's one of the beacons of hope in health and universal health care. And I think then we need to come together and kind of figure out what has just been said on the hybrid participant, to say how can we best organize the technology to benefit the broader health ecosystem and the broader public. And we spoke about in another session that I think when we look at AI, it's and how to deal with it in the future and what it promises, we don't have a solution problems anymore, we have a relationship problem. And I said that before, so if we can come to a way that we can govern the relationship between public, private and even philanthropic sector in the health sphere, we have a lot of opportunity to go forward. And I think sometimes it gets lost in the discussion, but I just wanted to highlight that a little bit because I can really see we spoke about a hybrid approach, and I think this goes for this as well, if that makes sense.
Yes, so a relationship problem, so this really goes also again to this idea of a social contract. What is the role of a company like Google in that respect? Does Google see itself as part of our social contract, and in what way?
I would think, of course, we come from the position of the inventor of technology and now facilitator of the technology. So of course I am biased to that extent, and I have a professional deformation that I bring to this. But I think we saw it in the other discussion that was around youth mental health, that we had in the other session just now. And I think that there's much activities where there's a shared responsibility and a shared opportunity. Of course, when you come from industry, you have a natural direction of travel, but that doesn't mean it doesn't travel in the broader society's direction. So I think, you know, what I see in our buildings, it's very much based around health when we talk about AI in Google, and there's much health in Google AI. And therefore, we come from the topical approach. What should this thing do? In what area? And when we speak health, it's very practical approaches that we can look at that are beneficial. And therefore, I think we spoke the last days, it's all about the shared responsibility and the shared opportunity, and we strongly believe in that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I've seen people typing. I don't know if you were just emailing or also putting in questions into Slido. I'm assuming the last. I think you were putting questions into Slido, and I think it's important that we have a little bit of help there with identifying some of these questions. Now we have Paula Del Rey Puig of the Public Health Register of the NHS, who's been selecting some of those questions. And of course, we have Hatim Abdul Hussain, who has a health innovation organization in Kent. Can you maybe give us some of the questions that have come from the audience?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And we have quite an active online discussion. So some of the main themes that emerged from the comments were around bias, around the sort of Europe and healthcare as a sector lagging behind on AI, around social participation on AI development, accountability of the private sector, and also about the consequences for Europe of the global supply chain dependencies. But one question that we thought would be interesting for the panel to highlight was that is Europe holding on to an outdated model of social contract and welfare systems? Can we be bolder in imagining a future where we do outsource a lot of the work to AI, and in exchange we have more time to explore human pursuits as opposed to economic ones?
Wonderful. I think that's a wonderful question. I'm thinking of who I'm going to ask this question to. I think, Virginia, maybe it would be nice if you can answer this, and maybe also in your answer elaborate a little bit about what you've heard so far.
Of course, thank you. Thank you for the question. Actually, luckily what I had planned to react goes very much along those lines as well. So as a neuroscientist who's also very interested in mental health and human behavior, the way I'm kind of seeing what's emerging from this discussion, there's very much a question here about how do we stay human in the age of AI, right? AI is the first technology that can really mimic human intelligence to some degree. Obviously, that's debated, but how do we then retain our humanity? And when I think about what humans need for their health and for their well-being, the obvious things that come to mind are food, shelter, social interaction, of course, medical care. But I also really want to highlight that we also need fulfillment, a sense of achievement, a sense of working hard and actually getting places in life. And so when we're talking about sort of the potential job displacement, automation, different jobs being created, there's a real question of what exactly, we need to decide what exactly we want to hand off to AI and what exactly we want to keep for ourselves to, benefit our well-being and our health as well. That's just what I'm taking away from this.
Mm-hmm. And Hatim, do you have another question from the audience?
Yeah, we do. We've had a lot of conversation around the balancing risk and AI, and particularly focused on marginalized groups and underserved communities. When we know that AI shows biases for people of color, women, and certain categories of people, how do we train AI to treat everyone equally?
Yeah, so this is definitely also a question that we've been talking now to some extent about sort of the government becoming a little bit poorer and not being able to pay for the system. But on the other hand, there's also growing health inequalities, right? And the question is AI gonna improve this situation, or is it gonna make it worse? I'm thinking maybe you might have an answer to this. Yes?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Yeah, it's a really important question. We have seen real-life examples of AI deployment leading to discrimination and adverse outcomes. And so it's something we need to be thinking about. And so one of the things we come back to at the Health Foundation is this concept of responsible AI. And what responsible innovation is making sure that technology works for all people, society, and the planet. Often when we're talking about AI at the moment, we say, And obviously, you know, there'll be some ethical issues and we'll work those out, or something along the lines of, yeah, obviously there's a risk and we'll mitigate those. But what responsible AI is saying is it's not enough just to mitigate the risks and make sure that it doesn't make things worse, but it's about choosing and developing and using AI systems that actively make things better for people, not just not make them worse. And often when we talk about bias, we talk about system bias, which is absolutely right, and data bias. Those things are very important. But one of the debates that we often ignore is the bias that arises during the process of implementation of these systems. In the UK, there's hundreds of hospitals. They're all independently kind of making decisions about what AI systems they buy and make available to their patients. They're not under any obligation to ensure that the hospital 5 miles down the road is also doing the same thing. And so what's happening is that AI is predominantly being explored in organizations that are large, have money, and are usually attached to universities. And so those regional hospitals, the ones that aren't attached to universities, normally have more diverse demographic patients, they're being left behind. And so there's inequality not just between patients, but between regions as well, and deepening inequality. So we need to be thinking about what systems are we choosing? Are they actively making things better? Is the system itself working? But also, are we introducing bias in the way that we're rolling it out?
Yeah, thank you very much. And maybe this is also a question for you, Lasse. You are also, of course, aware of sort of these health inequalities growing within society. There's a role there also of the social insurance institutions. Are we going to invest a bit more here or there? What are we going to focus on in rationalizing care? And do you have any vision about this? Do you see any good news coming from AI systems helping you doing this, or how do you think about this in terms of social insurance?
I'm an optimist in this. I think
you need a microphone. Yeah.
I'm an optimist in this, so I think AI is able to pick risk persons, and that of course helps us then to put more efforts of preventing the potential risks. So as a medical doctor, I see a lot of potential there, that you can have an early prevention of the risks coming through. So I see much more potential than risks actually here.
Yeah. One of the questions that I'm seeing on the Slido here, and I guess I would like to ask you that question because I heard you repeating it right next to me, is when will the tech bros be held to account? Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I'm left with that question, right? So generally, I'm rather optimistic on the impact of AI in healthcare as such, but generally, as we're talking about social contract, we're all basically also talking about power. Politics has a bit to do with power. So, generally, if you look at pretty much any government in the world, you see that the most powerful people in a party are not assigned for the health ministry. Usually, health is that thing that needs to be taken care of and just to avoid trouble, just to avoid scandals and so on. But the big competition is for the power lies somewhere else, and I think the power lies with whatever can influence democracy generally, and the influence that the tech bros, that algorithms have on our democracy is simply huge. So whatever we see on our phones is a direct result of those algorithms that are not being influenced by elected people, but by non-elected people, by one segment or other or the other of tech bros. But that's definitely one big problem. The other problem is, if we're asking the question, when will tech bros be held to account? The next question should be, who should hold them to account? Because right now we have 3 examples that are, I guess, relevant. One is the dinner organized by Mr. Trump, where he invited everyone to praise him. And we've seen that worked. Every tech bro was there, and they obviously praised him. We see Mr. Putin, another tough guy, who has banned some social platforms in Mother Russia. And we also see just 2 days ago Mr. Netanyahu, who says we have a bit of a problem with the image of Israel because we've been championing killing children and people are not very happy about it, but we need to fight it back. So we need to make sure that TikTok lands in the hands of somebody who's nice to us. So will technologies, will the tech bros or the technologies as such be held to account? Yeah, do we want other governments? Do we want tough guys to control what we see on our phones, to control our democracy? I don't think so. So I think this is the main problem. And we need to look into that primarily. Otherwise, AI is great. I think there's a great amount of potential there.
Thank you. So from the position of the OECD, looking into this division between the private and the public, and also the issue of accountability, could you maybe shed some light on this from the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. There are two different tracks that I would want to highlight. One is work we've done. We came up with our original set of AI principles in 2019. And since then, one of the things we've built is a surveillance tool to identify AI incidents that occur. I think that is the type of thing to transparently report the type of incidents, so that way there is clarity around what some of these challenges are. I think it's going to be really important. From what I understand, Health AI, which is the group that's working on supporting the global regulation, is working on a more, I'll say, sophisticated post-market surveillance tool. But which I think is equally as important and is similar to the needs of what we already do for post-market surveillance around drugs. So how can we actually bring that to pass, I think is really crucial. The other thing that I really want to highlight is, which we've referred to, but I want to build on it, the need for more public-private partnerships that involve people. So 4 Ps, not just 3. And a large part of that rationale is that the private sector has the resources, the financial and technical resources to bear, and the appetite for risk for taking new developments and taking new initiatives forward, whereas the public and people have both the data and the needs of what they actually believe they want, the solutions that need to get solved. And so we need to be bringing both of these groups together more effectively. And frankly, the public sector has tried to solve AI by itself, and the private sector has tried to solve AI by itself, neither of which have delivered particularly good results. So we do need to cross that bridge together in order to realize the responsible adoption of AI that we're all looking for.
So we have a little bit of time for someone in the audience, and I would like to ask Barbara Prainsack, who's over here, who's a professor of solidarity and basically has devoted her life on thinking about the social contract. She's right over here, and maybe we have a microphone to bring to her. Barbara, what is from what you've been hearing so far, can you just give us a short moment of your thinking around all of this? Because you've done this quite extensively. She's right over here. Yes.
Thank you, Annick. So to everyone, this is not scripted. I didn't know that I would be asked. Well, I think of what I should take out of all the things that have been said. The first concerning the sort of social contract in our societies, whether societal solidarity remains intact is a political decision, right? You have to build it and sustain it, and as I've said on multiple occasions, people cannot provide this glue between the bricks of justice. They cannot be solidaristic if there aren't systems in place who help them do so. So this focus of public policy on individual behavior has not been very helpful. And when this idea that nudging and individual behavior change will solve disease burdens, and AI can help us with that, when I hear this from policymakers, then I'm very, very concerned. So, I mean, clearly we have individual behavior matters, but we need to look at the structural factors. And here, in terms of AI, I can only echo what you've said. We need to build the future, and we need to determine what kind of problems do we need to be solved, and then see how different technologies can help us do that. And as an enthusiast of AI, being an enthusiast of AI myself, one concern that I have next to the political economy of AI is that it detracts us from the low-tech solutions, so that it detracts effort and funding from high-touch societies and high-touch medicine towards high-tech. Clearly, we need both. What I see is a lot of attention going away from low-tech, high-touch solutions. And I think maybe we in Europe should be social innovators besides being technological innovators. And finally, and I'm not going to talk about this, there's a program called Data Solidarity that also has some solutions for AI, and everyone who's interested in that, yes, please look us up.
Yes, please do. So thank you very much. I would like to ask Floris. Floris, you've been making some cartoons about what we've just been talking about, some drawings. Maybe you can show us one. Accountability. Siri, get me in. Oh, whoa. That's very nice. And that's SpaceX right there. Do you have another one for us? Student business. Big AI. Yeah, the last one is scary, isn't it? And do you have another one, Floris? Yes. Not to be regulated. Yes. Oh, yeah. Very nice. Yes, let's make it more beautiful and make it more strong, right? This social contract. I think we've started that conversation today. I would very much like to thank everybody for contributing to this conversation. And last but not least, I am going to invite our dear president to the stage, Clemens. And I would like to highlight that Clemens Auer has also written a wonderful piece in EuroHealth about this very topic. So please go ahead and read that as well. But for now, for the end of this Gastein, please welcome Clemens Auer, and thank you all.
Dear friends, it's time to close this conference and say goodbye. And I promised not to be gloomy because the sun is out. You know what I was thinking? Maybe with all the potential disruption of AI for the labor market, and that we might have much more time at hand. And as we heard on this panel, we might even be able to find pleasure again. You know, I'm an old philosopher. That's my academic training, by the way. Maybe we can recreate what Socrates had, you know, and spend our time at symposias like this here and enjoy ourselves. Maybe that's also one of the results of AI. I don't know. Let me finish. I wanted this conference, and the board wanted this conference to be inspiring for you, and we picked this rethinking solidarity and the considerations about the fractured social contract to be challenging and to be inspiring for each and every one of us, because as Eric Schmidt said, you know, the consequences, Mr. Schmidt says, you know, the consequences of AI for the social and political debate are dramatically underhyped. And this is what we wanted to achieve, to stop this, stop the fact that this discussion about AI is underhyped, the consequences, the social and the political consequences. And the only point I would like to make in response also to this very clever remark from the audience is, you know, who makes the AI bros accountable? We shouldn't forget that in a moment, the investments decision in AI, and I said that in my opening, are not made by parliaments or at the table of governments, the cabinet tables of governments. They are made by investors. And you know what investors have in mind. You know, I'm not an anti-capitalist, so this is not per se bad, but the decisions, what we will invest in, should also be a decision, or at least corresponded by debates we need in parliaments and at the cabinet tables of governments. And that's what it is about. And I think maybe this conference contributed at least a little bit to the awareness of the importance that these topics have to be repoliticized and brought to the political attention. And I'm glad that Vlad is here, and I hope that you and your colleagues in the European Parliament and the national parliaments and the ministers and at the government tables of the European Union are starting to considering this. Let me take the moment to say goodbye. And before I do that, I would also say thank you to Dorli and her wonderful team, because yeah, because without you and your team, we wouldn't enjoy these conferences so much. And my last and final thought is, yes, come again and use this opportunity at the European Health Forum Gastein to be your personal symposium and get inspired and take the most out of your life. And the sun is out, and so we can enjoy life. And enjoy your trips home, have safe travels home, and see you next year again. Thank you very much. The scope of this year's conference is rethinking solidarity, and especially the social contract in Europe.
Social contract for me is about having an agreement on what we want in healthcare system with all the stakeholders.
So I think NGOs play an important role in bridging the different players that are involved in developing but also upholding and evolving the social contract.
When we look at the social contract in the European Union, artificial intelligence can be a solution, but it has to be driven by strategy, by vision, and that is determined by us as humans and as Europeans.
You need to construct the social contract with the patients, because it is for the patients, but it needs to be co-created with them. They have the expertise and they know what they need.
The European Health Forum Gastein, it's a unique space in the European context to bring together not only the European Commission, the European institutions, but also patient organizations, grassroots movements, academia, non-profits.
One of the great things about this forum is also about making contacts with the people that are the same age as you and are going to be the future leaders of public health in Europe tomorrow.
So the first time at a conference, I was on a walking session. So yesterday we had a walk around non-communicable disease and prevention, and it was incredible to walk through Gastein and also have an open and cohesive dialogue around how we can work together to tackle the rise that we're seeing in non-communicable disease. So you have to get stuck in, and it's an opportunity to learn and work together in the team. And I found that really helpful for my own professional development because I'm learning new things. I'm going away with new ideas that I can take home and apply to my work in England.
Beyond the conferences, which are excellent quality in terms of speakers and content, the best part of Gastein is the networking part. The networking events, especially the gala dinner, is a perfect way to get connected with the high hierarchy, let's put it that way, which still in Gastein is very accessible. And I think that is the perks of this experience. Everyone is open, eager to learn from others and eager to exchange.
So we're at the end of an exciting EHFG week. We had the pleasure of welcoming 550 participants this year. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to our session partners for organizing the sessions together with us. And for all of you for engaging in the sessions, attending side meetings, and hopefully you also enjoyed the networking opportunities. It is all of you who shaped this forum. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you again next year. Goodbye.